Hey everybody, today I am out in Napa finally getting hands-on with, well, the most important launch Infiniti has done in quite some time. This is the all-new 2025 Infiniti QX80. I can't tell you how it drives yet, you'll have to stay tuned for that, but we can talk about just about everything else. First, let's talk about the design. This is definitely a departure from the bubbly design that the QX80 has had in the past. We get much squarer lines, a bolder but somehow less hungry grille. This is definitely bigger than the grille we find in the Lexus LX, but I would say it actually fits the character of this better than the LX's grille does on the current LX. We have the daytime running lights up here at the top, right there by the hood line, and then the actual headlights are below that. We have functional aero grills in that area. Lots of grille real estate, but again, definitely a boxier theme than before. Now, size-wise, this is about the same size as a Cadillac Escalade. It's about 211 inches long or so. It rides on a completely new frame and completely new body. This is a ground-up redesign. So even though the wheelbase is about the same as before, around 120 inches, everything is new. And that's because we have a four-corner adaptive air suspension, really obvious from this angle, because right now the suspension is at its lowest ride height mode. That's why it looks kind of slammed there a bit. 22-inch wheels on this particular model, and there's almost 5 inches of total suspension motion in the air suspension, up from the highest height all the way down to the parking height that we see here. It'll also, of course, lower itself down for its aerodynamic mode. Now, the previous generation QX80 had an air suspension, but it was only rear air suspension. The front, those were always steel springs. The bigger change happens back here, where we find a much squarer design and much more of a conventional design. The previous generation QX80 had kind of a two-tiered cake thing going on with the hatchback in the rear. I never really cared for that look. It also compromised cargo, so this is definitely squarer. The opening is slightly larger than before, and we have significantly more cargo room behind that hatch. You'll notice lots of room back here in this cargo area. I have that 22-inch roller bag over there. And a little bit more importantly, you don't have to reach in quite as far in this cargo area as before, because the bumper doesn't overhang as far as it did in the last generation, and then we have a lower cargo load-in height thanks to that new frame design. If I go ahead and close the hatch here, you'll notice that hatch is relatively speedy. We have a new design to the taillights that we haven't seen from Infiniti before. This is kind of a piano key style design with these individual red elements, and they animate in sequence as you turn the car on and off. We also have full LED light modules, including LED turn signals. These are a reflector design where we have a top-mounted LED that fires down and towards the rear. A lot of folks were asking about the badging on the back. Here's a closer look. QX80 and then the four-wheel drive logo right over there on that side. The exhaust tips, they're tucked up under the bumper in the back. And let's go right around to the front and take a look under the hood. We'll stop here and we'll say this is the Autograph logo because this is the top-end trim. This is $112,000. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let's go ahead and go in and open the hood right there. Under here we find not the 3-liter 6 from the Q50 or Q60, it's a brand new twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6 producing 450 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. This is more than 100 pound-feet of torque more than the outgoing V8 engine with a 9-speed automatic transmission. You have your choice of 4-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, but no 2-speed transfer case. Fuel economy is up 20%, so about 2 miles per gallon on average better than the outgoing V8 model. I also think it helps the front-end proportions. This engine is also a little bit lighter and shorter than the outgoing engine. Now let's take a look quickly at the inside. Bearing in mind, again, this is the top-end Autograph trim. So we have the most adjustable and most comfortable seats. Power design there, 4-way adjustable lumbar. That is not standard. The base model is going to have 2-way lumbar. Over here we have the adjustable bolsters and the seat massage button because this has that particular feature. We have a new Infiniti steering wheel design. I hope this makes its way to the rest of the Infiniti lineup because I am kind of partial to some of these new 2-spoke steering wheels. Now if I hop in here, you'll notice the other thing, which is this absolutely enormous 2-screen in-dash infotainment system, and these 2 screens are standard. Over here, this screen supports Apple CarPlay, but interesting twist, this screen over here on the driver's side also supports Apple CarPlay. So this is a 2-screen CarPlay setup with mapping over here and then the display over here. That means you can do something else in the CarPlay if you want to still have that CarPlay navigation active. If you'd rather not, you can of course unplug your smartphone, and then this is going to go back eventually to the Google mapping interface over there. There is wireless CarPlay and wireless Android supported as well, and the Google mapping interface here with satellite imagery. Of course, all the voice commandable Google functions there as well. The dashboard has a definitely different design than we had in the past. Lots of stitched materials and premium materials, new ambient lighting motifs as well. It's a bit difficult to see on camera, but this is illuminated at night. It says Infiniti right across there. And then there's some illuminated stripes in this section of the dashboard. Lots of wood trim going on in here, something that Lexus has discontinued in the GX recently. So if you're looking for real wood trim, you might want to check out this model. Of course, the LX still has that. And then down here we have another touchscreen. This is about the same size as what we find in some of the smaller Infiniti models in the US. This is primarily a climate control screen. It's also where we find drive mode settings like the snow mode, eco mode, etc. Controls for the adaptive air suspension there, the front and rear defroster, and of course the shifter buttons, because this is a push shifter system. This button is the automatic ride height button. Sorry, the camera's having difficulty focusing over there. And then we have one of the cooler functions afforded us by this dual screen setup, where we can do very widescreen front camera views. So for instance, we can expand this camera view out to use both screens. That's really darn cool. And that's even going to work in the transparent front end view. So if we zoom that out, you can see what's under the vehicle. It does this by stitching images together as you're driving. That's a really cool touch. That's something that we saw when we first previewed the QX80 in the studio some months ago. Moving over to the front doors, again, lots of wood going on there. I really like those metal inlays. It's a really cool touch with those laser cut sections. Back here we have this sort of Egyptian motif, I guess you could say, with this sort of headdress speaker grille design right here on the front headrests. This is part of the up-level audio system that this model has. We have a big panoramic moonroof back there, and in the back is Connor from Cars.com. He's back there in the third row. We'll check out that headroom in just a bit. Plenty of room back there. Moving back to the center console, though, before we go back there, two big cup holders over here on that side. We then have the USB-C ports right over here with a big storage area for your smartphones. You can actually close that lid with some of those larger smartphones still plugged in. Place for you to dock your key if you don't want it to get lost as you're driving. And then, of course, a cool box behind. Let's go ahead and check out the second row now. Bearing in mind that this is a top-end autograph trim, we find yet one more LCD right here in the middle. This is where we adjust some of the features exclusive to this trim, like the rear seat massage. Actually, I should say exclusive to the upper end trims, because some of these features are going to be found in the next level down. And then we have tri-zone automatic climate control. I have to admit, I am surprised this is not a 4-zone system. This model has about 7 inches more combined legroom than we found in the previous QX80. So lots more legroom. This front seat's now all the way back in its tracks. I can still have plenty of room back here in the second row. But headroom's actually a little bit more limited back here than you might think due to the standard panoramic moonroof. We find several inches less headroom than in the segment leaders, but it's still pretty comfortable. And this second row is not only massaging, it's also heated and ventilated and powered as well. Second row passengers also get some cup holders back here, lots of storage space. There's even a storage bin right there under everything. Again, that LCD right there, and then another storage box behind where currently there are water bottles hiding. There's some USB-C charge points there. And then if we take a look at the third row, back there where Connor's hiding, we have some USB charge points on each side, the buttons for the power reclining third row mechanism, and we even have heated seats back there in the third row, but also plenty of hard plastics, because the third row seats are probably going to spend most of their time folded, so this is really more of an extension of the cargo area that also functions as actually surprisingly comfortable third row seats. These are pretty roomy, and there are 3 seats in the back. The outboard one that Connor is sitting in there currently, that one has latch anchors, so you'll find latch anchors in the second row and then one back there in the third row. If you want to know more about the new QX50, be sure and stay tuned, because that drive review is coming up pretty soon. Let's talk about pricing now. $82,450 plus a $1,995 destination charge gets you the base version of the QX80. That's going to be the pure trim. And the big difference is that it's not going to have the adaptive air suspension that we find in this model or in every other QX80. Yep, if you step up to the next level, the Luxe trim, the air suspension becomes standard. Now, if you want 4-wheel drive, that's going to be at least $85,550, again, plus that destination charge. And if you want this autograph trim, it's going to be $112,500. Keep in mind, however, that even though that seems pretty expensive for a QX80, it is right in line with most of the competition. It's definitely less expensive starting than the Lexus LX, and even something like a Jeep Wagoneer is going to cost more when we're talking about a comparably equipped model. A Grand Wagoneer starts actually over $90,000. And this is going to give you more standard power, and the air suspension, which I think is actually one of the best features on this vehicle, something that most manufacturers charge extra for, is, I mean, it's still extra here, but it's going to be on every version except that base model. So be sure and let me know what you think about the new QX80. Let me know if there's anything we missed, what you'd like us to cover if we can in the full video. That is going to be recorded the same day, but hopefully we can do some voiceovers if anybody has any extra questions. And of course, find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the other social places, and I'll see all of you guys next week.